I know I look like a sociopath right now. I'm wearing a sweater in the middle of August. It's a little cold in my room, so just take it easy on me. In this video today, I'm going to go over and discuss my 5 middle round values that I love this year in fantasy. I feel like it's not really right to make a video about early round values because one, we obviously know they're really good players, but also it really depends on where you're drafting in order to get some of these players. But as we get to the middle rounds, it's really open for anyone to grab. We've done videos in the past where I've talked about, dart throw players that we should be taking later in drafts. So I felt like what better way to kind of make this like a full circle moment and start talking about middle round values that I really love this year. Roll the intro. In one of my most recent videos, I did get dragged for wearing a Yankees hat, so I said, you know what, it's only right I come out, give good content, and change my hat. I'm going to define the middle rounds as rounds like 6 through 10, because I feel like anything earlier is obviously a pretty early draft pick in terms of ADP, and anything later, you're starting to get to that like dart throw range. So let's start with round 6, where I absolutely love Alvin Kamara this year, who's a 6th round pick on Underdog currently. To get an RB without any competition in his backfield and no real threat to take his targets away, obviously Chris Olave is still on the Saints and he's not going anywhere, but that leaves Alvin Kamara second in command in targets realistically. His PPR upside is unquestionable at this point with the amount of volume that he's going to get in the receiving game, but injuries is his biggest caveat, but I would say injuries could be anyone's biggest caveat. You need whoever you draft to end up staying healthy. Obviously, some guys are more prone to get injured than others. We know that. Alvin Kamara is a good pick considering his situation and that he's going to funnel a lot of passing volume. If you're at a point in your draft and you really don't need a running back, even though I love Kamara, or maybe Kamara comes off the board, a backup plan that would be really nice to have would be somebody like Hollywood Brown, who is currently on pace to not miss any games so far. It's not an official report, but the way it's trending looks like he may not even miss a game, and worst case, he misses week 1, you have him for the rest of the season. Round 7 for me is where things start to really heat up, and I feel like you can't go wrong with drafting any of the rookie wide receivers that are going in this range, which would include guys like Ladd McConkey, Keon Coleman, and even Brian Thomas Jr. of the Jacksonville Jaguars. In the case of Ladd McConkey and Keon Coleman, they both have the potential this season to lead their team in targets, which is really good, and at the worst, they would wind up being second most in targets if Dalton Kincaid could out-target Keon Coleman, which is very possible. Whereas Brian Thomas Jr. doesn't currently have that potential to be number 1 in targets or even number 2. His ceiling could be second most targeted behind Evan Ingram in this offense if all goes right for him. But realistically, given Brian Thomas Jr.'s skill set and his big playability to stretch the field down the field, I feel like it's safe to say that he probably won't wind up with less targets than maybe third most on his team. We'll give Christian Kirk the benefit of the doubt. Obviously, Evan Ingram is going to be number 1 as he's one of the most highly targeted tight ends in the league, let alone his own passing offense. So I really like Brian Thomas Jr. and the value that he provides in round 7. But you can't go wrong with drafting any of the rookie wide receivers in this range. What makes drafting the rookies so interesting is that maybe for the 2 people that go ahead and take Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors early, they may not be inclined to get as many unproven commodities just yet on their fantasy rosters. They're already taking a chance in either one of those guys, though I think they're going to be special. Don't get me wrong. They're worth their ADP for sure. But the rookie wide receivers, I consider them an abyss where some people are going to be afraid to take a chance on them because there are other players that are available that have proven that they're legit NFL players. So use that to your advantage to get a little uncomfortable and take a shot on the upside that one of these rookie wide receivers can provide. In round 8, the values that I really love at this range are DeAndre Hopkins and Curtis Samuel. So we're kind of going back to the wide receiver position now. And what's really interesting about both of these players and their value currently in the 8th round on Underdog at least is that they both have had injury woes in preseason and training camp, but neither one of them seem to be on pace to miss any regular season time. It has been reported that DeAndre Hopkins could be back as early as week 1 now, so I feel a lot better taking somebody like him or even taking a Curtis Samuel who's dealing with turf toe than I am with the rest of the players going in this range. If you're watching this video and you decided to go wide receiver in the last 2 rounds and you need a running back to stabilize your roster, I would say pivot and take guys like Raheem Mostert and DeAndre Swift, who are falling in the 8th round on Underdog. These are both great value picks. No, they may not be guys that finish inside the top 5 or top 10, but they do have promise in their offenses. Moving on to round 9, I would make sure there's not a game-breaking quarterback that could be available, whether that's like a Kyler Murray or a Dak Prescott, or I've seen even Joe Burrow fall because of his injury history. Obviously, if those guys aren't there and you play with people in your league that are smart drafters, they won't be there. But I say we go back to running back here in round 9. You really can't go wrong at this point in the draft taking the trio of running backs that include Brian Robinson Jr., Zach Moss, and if you're really feeling the upside and you want a chance to absolutely hit a home run with your 9th round pick, Javonte Williams is an interesting pick here. In fantasy, you could never have too many running backs or have too much running back depth, given that these players get hurt all the time and you never know when they're going to get injured. They do touch the ball the most besides a quarterback, so that's something to keep in mind. But at least in the case of Zach Moss and Brian Robinson Jr., these guys can take a split workload, 50% of the snaps, and still wind up being fantasy relevant, which is why they're good picks here in the 9th round. Finally, we have round 10, and the 2 players I'm targeting, whether you're in need of a wide receiver because you took more running backs in the rounds prior, or if you need a running back because you kept hammering wide receivers these next few rounds, look no further than these 2 options. For the wide receiver, we have Brandin Cooks. And I know we've seen much better days out of Brandin Cooks, but for a 10th round pick, considering that he's been mostly available his entire career, on average, and most of these seasons were 16-game seasons, of course, he played 14.8 games per season on average. So at least you know whoever you take in the 10th round is going to be someone that is healthy and someone that's going to be able to be an option in your lineups. His 8 touchdowns were a big reason why he was even somewhat fantasy relevant last year, even though he wasn't. He finished as the wide receiver 37, but given that he's in a very good passing offense and an offense that is going to continue to be a pass-heavy offense, this could be a really good pick, and it has a potential to even get better. Not saying this would happen, but if something were to happen in the CeeDee Lamb contract negotiations, where CeeDee Lamb doesn't play some of the games this year because he's holding out, or gets back on the field late, and I'm not wishing for this to happen, but gets injured somehow, you now have the best wide receiver on the Dallas Cowboys, a team that's going to throw a lot, and then all of a sudden, Brandin Cooks is a very good value in round 10. For the running back position, I would say in round 10, Tyjae Spears is a really good value at this point in the draft. If you need a running back, like I said, you can never have too much running back depth, and even though this is someone who's projected to split the carries or split the volume with Tony Pollard, there's a very good chance that he can outpace Tony Pollard and finish better than him, and it doesn't cost nearly as much as it costs to draft a Tony Pollard. It sounds ridiculous to say as someone that is trying to give good fantasy football advice and trying to help you win your fantasy football leagues at home. When you have these split kind of backfields, it's almost a coin toss. So you have 50% chance that it will go your way, but there is a 50% chance that Tony Pollard could be the better running back and Tyjae Spears gets no love. But given the options that you have to draft in round 10, you're giving yourself a 50% chance at a quality running back, which is still pretty good. Obviously, in both of these cases, whether it's Cooks or Spears, you need everything to break right for you, and I get that. But given it's round 10, given there are many options that are guaranteed to break right for you in all phases, you could wind up with a either quality bench wide receiver or a strong depth piece at running back with one of these 2 players. So that's going to wrap it up for this video. I know the title says 5 players and 5 middle round values that you should draft, and we named off a bunch of more values than just that. If you want to hate on me for clickbaiting, I totally get it, but I felt like giving more options to the viewers is always going to be a better situation. As always, if you like the video, I would really appreciate if you would just smash the like button for me. And if you like fantasy football content like this, feel free to subscribe down below. We continue to make content on this channel all the time. Business is as usual. We ain't gonna stop. So I'm sorry to the haters that want us to stop. It ain't gonna happen. Thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Turtle. I'm signing out, and I'll see you in the next video.